So these are the tested views. Tell others to take them also. Yeah, the modern Indian history test series schedule. It's highly recommended. Only 2 questions will be there. So chapter wise, two questions are not a big deal, right? So you should be able to write them. Okay, so we'll start the class. So yeah. Right. So cannot impose blanket ban on all firecrackers, says Supreme Court. Now, what is the most important thing or major thing we need to learn? So the major thing here is the templated approach. Blanket ban is never going to work in any field for any particular thing, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, or for firecrackers. Anywhere or any place, blanket ban is not a highly recommended stuff. We have seen it through empirical data also, like why blanket ban won't work. Now, first of all, the term is constitutional morality and societal morality. Simple. So society believes that using firecrackers and all these things is their right, their religious festivities and all those things. If Supreme Court says ban this in a very severe tone, okay, there might be a point where people actually get some vent out of all these festivals. If that opportunity is lost, they might stop respecting the Supreme Court. The entire purpose of Supreme Court is to maintain that authority itself. If people say, I will go and burn the crackers. I don't care what Supreme Court says. Then what is the value of Supreme Court? Yes or no? Nobody will listen or respect the Supreme Court. The ultimate perception of Supreme Court will be going away. So that is why it already happened in. That is exactly what I'm saying. You have to take the help of police to enforce it in a brutal way. Normally, if Supreme Court says, please don't play music after 10 p.m. Okay. Occasionally, 1 or 2 people will play the loud DJ and all those things. Police will come and stop them. Okay. But if every house is doing the same, police cannot stop it, right? 1 or 2 parties, police will be able to stop it. How can police arrest every house or everyone? It becomes redundant. Next thing, Supreme Court last year also told after 10 p.m. don't burn the crackers. Okay, people started burning the crackers at 10 p.m. Why? I can arrest 1 or 2 persons, but I cannot stop thousands, right? The limitation of the state is also there. So these are the ground realities we have to accept, and it's the aware society that accepts the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court is saying, I'm not against crackers. I'm against crackers which are highly polluters, and which will cause serious problems to senior citizens and young people. So that is, these kind of things are not suggested by the Supreme Court. Now, as I told you, government people or Supreme Court are businesses. They should not wake up 1 day before Diwali. They should actually wake up 1 day after Diwali and start consensus building. Shopkeepers, workers, traders, Supreme Court, executive, states, pollution boards, everybody should come together, discuss, and create some alternatives for the long run. Nobody is against the festivals of Hindus, right? It's the distortions that are not entertained. Clear? And it's a universal template. So Kashmir's fragility has more complex reasons. M.K. Narayanan was former CBI chair, Intelligence Bureau, right? He was National Security Advisor. He is one of the leading figures in this particular field. If he is coming and saying something, we better listen to the overall dimension. What are the major themes he is trying to say? The first and most important thing is this has already happened. If you see post-independence consolidation, or if you see Indian history, the issue with Kashmir was always there. The migration of Kashmiri Pandits happened earlier also. Infiltration problem was there. Deaths of migrants also happened in 1990s. This is a repeat of the past. Okay. The biggest lesson we have to learn here is long-term solutions need long-term efforts. Okay, and the perception that I have solved the issue is not actually going to solve the issue. Why? He uses a brutal term. Reputational interest is not accepting the many steps taken. You are more worried about the image of a political party or a leader or the army or India. Here, reputation can be interpreted in multiple ways. Reputation is one thing. I can bury something. Okay, how am I doing that? I'm using that through absence of agile press, absence of press. Media is not there. So, if media is not allowed freely to go into the Jammu and Kashmir, if media is not allowed to vent its own voice, what happens? The perception is managed. Yes, everything is safe and happy in Jammu and Kashmir. And there are two real stories. One story is people are actually happy that 370 is removed, not outside Kashmir. Within Kashmir also, a lot of people are happy that the 370 has been removed. But at the same time, because of all these things, there is an entire generation of Kashmiris who are believing that Indian government is not in their side or on their side. That perception also has to be dismantled, not brutalized. Okay. Now, two things. Almost all the terror attacks we have seen in the recent times, we know that the youth are from Kashmir. No outsider is coming into Jammu and Kashmir that easily. Probably they're getting money, technology, whatever. But the citizens are Indian citizens. They are getting trained by the radicalizations. Now, why it's very important, as I keep saying multiple times, vent. People need a vent. People need a discussion forum, a dialogue forum. Yes or no? See, just like Naxal issue or Nagaland issue, they won't accept it because instruments have become institutions. They will be happy to maintain the status quo. But RTI, local self-governments, sarpanches, panchayatis, discussions, when people come and start saying everything, we have to listen to them, right? Then once we start listening them, probably they will develop the trust. We need to create more amount of employment. That is exactly where the terrorists are also striking. Just when we felt like Kashmir was actually normal, they started killing the Kashmiri Pandits. Now nobody is going and investing in Kashmir. What will happen? Slowdown of economy will happen in Kashmir. Automatically, the fears of people will become true. Okay, I'm not blaming government alone. Government has tried something. The method is debatable, but it has tried something. Unfortunately for them, before they reap the results, these terrorist groups are attacking, and it will create a vicious cycle. Why vicious cycle? If I encounter two Kashmir youth as a collateral damage, okay, unfortunate event, not wantedly done, they are also killed in the crossfire. Or the recent Pakistani matches, they were cheering Pakistan. I will throw them in jail. I will remove them from the jobs. Right? So that will create enough fire ammunition for the negative forces, anti-Indian forces. And the cycle will keep on burning. And when will we see normalcy? When we see a Kashmiri Pandit freely walking in Jammu and Kashmir, South Kashmir especially, without any fear or favor. Right? That is when we know normalcy is restored. But I don't want whoever came to Jammu and Kashmir right now are also going back again. The migration again started. So what did we achieve? So there are collectively a lot of problems. Now, why should we bury them as soon as possible? I'm not saying government is not doing, but again, why should we speed up with change? We should allow the free media. We should allow the frustrations to come out. Plus, we have to solve the Kashmir problem as soon as possible. Why? The geopolitical influence of Kashmir. That is what M.K. Narayanan is saying. For example, see, we don't want to give a new idea to China and Pakistan that this can be one more pressure point to India. It's already a pressure point. India is putting a lot of pressure on Pakistan. But one day, the creativity in China might flow into the Kashmir issue. Then it will become a whole new problem, right? So what he says is, we should not be bounded by the limited arguments like Pakistan is the cause of all the problems in Jammu and Kashmir because Taliban, America went away, Taliban has increased, and that is leading to Kashmir problems. We should not simplify things into one-line statements. We should actually collect a lot of ground level intelligence. We have to invest a huge amount of energy. We have to spend minds. Okay. And again, see, it's nobody's case to argue that Kashmiris don't belong to India. Even Kashmiris cannot say we don't belong to India. You are a part of India. You may not like it today, but you belong to India. And at the same time, why are you not liking me? What is your problem? I have to ask you that question also. Then I have to pacify you, give you the benefits. The more integration of Kashmir with India happens, the more the development will happen. Who is stopping that integration? The terrorists are outcome. Terrorists are the tip of the iceberg, but terrorists are surviving because of some kind of support to them at the grassroots level also, right? So still there is a section in the Kashmir which actually believes that Indian government is not in their favor. And these are all historical baggages. These are all historical baggages. They are not created overnight, right? From 1970s, 90s, 2000, the tons of bad histories between India and Kashmir. So all that baggage has to be ironed out. And the genuine leadership is what is needed. And again, remember, it's not the present government's fault alone. As I keep saying, Article 370 was a bridge between India and Jammu and Kashmir. The two islands were linked by the Article 370. So Article 370 was supposed to be a bridge from Kashmir to India. But most of the politicians, what did they do? They used the bridge from Indian side to Kashmir and misused the Article 370. Article 370 is misused more times than any other article. Why? That is why the trust deficit has been created. The Congress government has also done this. During Nehru time also, we have seen rigged elections for Abdullah. Right? Congress has done this. So every time when Indian government misuses the Article 370 to create a puppet rule in the Jammu and Kashmir, that is when the trust deficit has always increased. Now we destroyed the bridge. When we have blown away the bridge, right? So you have to see the consequences. It is not that easy for things to mend quickly, but we'll see how it goes. So the longer we allow this mismatch or miscommunication to continue, the more the scope for non-state actors to keep meddling. Okay, so that's one way to look at the things. And we have to spend more energy. We have to also deal with Pakistan, China, Tibet, Nepal. So a lot of countries will be involved. We have to solve all those issues also. Right. Finding a way out of deepening water stress. A very simple and straightforward article. You can make mains notes out of this article. So if you have to make a mains notes out of this article, what will be the structuring part? Which part will be introduction? Which part will be conclusion? Which parts are body? So how do you structure this answer? Intro, body, conclusion. What is the first question? The first question is India's deepening water stress. What are the steps or what are the measures needed to remove or move India out of water stress? Yes, that can be a simple question.
So first we will start with some stats. Like lot of stats are given, like a lot of groundwater is being drawn. So this is the need for the.
Do you remember that facts?
Remember stuff actually.
See, in mains answer writing, that stuff is what we call as value addition. Everybody will write the same thing. All the people in this room will write the same point, right? Okay, we need to save water. It's not a big deal. All of you will come to the same consensus, right? Is anybody going to write, throw more water away? No, all of you will write the same stuff, that we have to save water. But why do you have to save the water? You need to tell a story. You need to tell a story through empirical data. That is where this paragraph comes into the picture, and it has to be accurate. Why accurate? Only then the impact will be high through numbers. 80 to 90% of the water in rural areas are coming from groundwater. 80% of the population lives in rural areas. For 80% of Indian population uses 80% of water from groundwater. You can understand that majority of Indians are living only on groundwater. That's an impact. That's a straightforward intro. It's a fact. Okay. Next, you can also use the same thing for urban setting also. Urbanization is going to increase. Yes. 40 to 50% of the population will be living in urban setting by 2030. That means 60% of urban areas will use more water. Water conservation is not even a debate. Next, we can also quote this kind of data. If we
Ah, yes,
continue
sir.
on the same path, Punjab will be reduced to a desert in the next 25 years just because of agricultural practices. All this is water stress. So if you write these 3 points more or less in the introduction somehow, or either of the points in the introduction somehow, what are you telling? You are creating a negative impact on the mind of the examiner. Oh, it's a severe problem. You are not only telling that water is a problem, you are telling through data which we can analyze and understand. Okay, that water needs to be saved. Next, if I choose this as intro, what other decision I can take? I can split the answer into two side headings.
Rural, urban.
One is urban setting, the other one is rural setting. So I cannot write change copying pattern under urban, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the very reason why urban water setting is low or urban groundwater is low is different from rural area. Then under urban, I will push some points. Under rural, I will push some points. Then I will conclude. What is the conclusion? Conclusion will be this paragraph.
Yes, sir.
Conclusion will be this paragraph. It's a way forward. Why is it a way forward? The convergence has to happen. We have to reconfigure, we have to integrate, and we have to coordinate with multiple ministries. On the one hand side, Jal Shakti ministry will come and say save water. On the right hand side, you are distributing sugarcane subsidies. It doesn't work like that. Yes or no? Jal Shakti ministry and agriculture ministry has to come together. Only then water will be saved. So that convergence has to happen. That is way forward. Yes. Did you actually struggle to find an answer in that article now? No, it's a very simple, straightforward mechanism. It's a template, it's an approach. Whatever article you look in the newspaper, if you use your basic common sense, okay, this is a fact. Why is he writing a fact? He's writing a fact to create a impact. So every intro should have a impact. Especially in GS paper 3, you need to have that impact, either in society, social issues, governance. You write an impact. Women are being killed. That's a general statement. According to National Crime Records Bureau, a woman is raped every 8 minutes in India. Just the number adds the severity or seriousness of the issue. Yes. Then the structuring part, urban. The problems are different for urban and rural. So if you look at this article again, what are the points that you can find? Yes. He talks about urban setting. Niti Aayog says by 2019 it says 21 cities in India will run out of water. This goes under urban, right? The problems of urban. It is not limited to any one city. It is pan-Indian issue. Water problem is a pan-Indian issue. So we might assume Chennai, Mumbai, or Hyderabad, which have good access to water resources, are safe. But actually, even these cities are not safe. Okay, why? What are the reasons? The reason is common among all the cities. We have buried the lakes, we have filled the wetlands, we have killed the drainage systems. There is no place for the water to be soaked in. Yes or no? So all these are because of unplanned urbanization or bad planning. Okay, so what can we do? Can we go for afforestation? Within the city, afforestation is a very difficult thing. But in and around the city, probably we can go for afforestation or catchment areas, not catchment, afforestation, so that water tables might increase. Yes. Then the common theme is sponge cities. I told you, right? Sponge city, the Chinese model can be implemented in almost all the cities. Then deconcretization. At least we should make it compulsory for all the domestic places or commercial places to have a groundwater water capturing mechanism. Rain harvesting methods. Rainwater harvesting should be compulsory for all the buildings in a city. Yes. The comedy is in Chennai, this has been introduced in 2000s. Yes, in 2000 itself, Chennai made it mandatory for all the houses with a particular square feet to have groundwater harvesting. But nobody implements it seriously. We have to make it mandatory. All apartments, commercial buildings, government offices in Hyderabad also, if they have, we can save a lot of water. Jan Bhagidari. Yes or no? It should be a Jan Andolan. Only when people are awake, then they will solve the problem. If government alone is pushing, then we won't create the soak pits. Right? Then what else can be done for urban areas? We can invest in recycling water. Israel recycles almost 60 to 70% of its water. Okay, in urban setting in India, we don't recycle our water. Once the water comes from your tap, it is into Musi. Yes or no? There is no recycling. We wash our cars. See, whatever vegetable cleaning and all those things, that water can be reused for gardening or something. Even for face wash also, we waste a lot of water. Mini flushes and all these things are not encouraged. Yes. So all these things, behavioral change. So within urban setting, you can talk about different styles. Okay. Then you can go to rural area. Rural area, what are the steps?
One of these one is crop diversification.
Diversification of crops, drip irrigation, micro irrigation, har khet ko pani, per drop more crop, all these things can be introduced.
Behavioral change campaigns.
In rural area. How? Reducing the subsidies for groundwater extraction. First of all, many states, especially if you take Punjab, why are Punjab farmers extracting groundwater like anything? Free electricity. When you give free electricity, they will run the boat 24/7. So I have to make them pay for electricity and incentivize them to move towards non-paddy MSP crops. Okay, then I can encourage drip irrigation, micro irrigation, and all this. See, Punjab, the name Punjab comes from Punch, land of 5 rivers. If land of 5 rivers will become desert, it's a disaster in many levels, right? Yes or no? So that has to be stopped at all costs. Convergence of multiple efforts have to be done. Okay.
Behavioral change campaigns.
For farmers.
So not farmers, among rural.
See, again, domestic usage is hardly 4%. I have showed you that fact.
Yes.
See, all this car washing is for answer writing, but in reality, only 4% of water is used for car washing. Okay, but still, agriculture is a very huge guzzler. We need to definitely move into better techniques for agriculture. Seriously, we have to start investing on that particular thing. Next, most of the Indian continent falls under rain-fed area. Even today, 60% of agricultural area is done through rain-fed or monsoons. So we can promote ponds, watersheds, farm ponds. That means within the farm, you need to develop a pond, watershed development. Lot of things have to be invested. Narega works also have to be done in a better way. Convergence has to be done. So you can think of 10 points for urban area, think of 10 points for rural area, and your answer rating is completed for water issue. Yes. So next time you see a water issue, you will only be adding value addition, notes, short notes to whatever content you have thought. Yes, that is how you can use this particular answer. Now, so blaming government is very easy. Blaming state governments is a different achievement. Why? State governments are the villain. They don't do anything. Yes or no? They actually don't do a lot of things at the ground level. It's always the center schemes do this, do that. But you have to identify things, make rules, and implement them also. It's not only that, you have to make only rules and forget them. If you have coastal regulation zone, if you don't implement it, then what is the point? If you have ecological sensitive zones, but you don't implement it, then what is the point? Right? Like this, everything has to be done. From government side, he's saying hydrological mapping, agricultural water sensitive cropping choices, soil health, these things can be important. Government is doing that. But how many farmers are getting connected with that idea? There is an asymmetry between what government is doing and what farmers are taking away. So that asymmetry should also be covered. Yeah. If you don't do all these things, what will happen? Yes. Before 2050, we will drive with, we will have drought-like conditions. There is a saying, right? If ever there is a third world war, it will be because of water. Okay. So probably that might happen in 2035. So planet might be very happy. 15 years advance. Yes.
So why you want zombie statistics?
It's a zombie statistic because nobody knows the origin of that statistic. It's called as a zombie statistic because NITI Aayog said that in its report. But who told Niti Ayog? Nobody. So that is why it is called as zombie statistic. This is not the only zombie statistic. There are multiple zombie statistics which are very popular. Everybody quotes them, but nobody actually knows them. Zombie quotes, for example, be the change you wish to see in the world. Okay, Gandhi never explicitly said that in any of his writings. Like in all his writings, letters, quotes, poems, books, Gandhi never explicitly used that word, be the change you wish to see in the world. But that is a very, very famous quote of Gandhi. Yes, the zombie quote. I mean, his intention might be the same thing, but the expression is never used by Gandhi. Definitely, it doesn't matter. You can write latest Niti Ayog report says 41 cities. Who is going to pass it?
Doesn't the examiner know this?
He assumes that you are very close to सच के आसपास वाला झूठ को पकड़ना बहुत मुश्किल है, right? The line from that movie, Bomkesh Bakshi. Yes, so he does the same thing, right? So if you are saying Niti Ayog on 41, it looks very reliable. And again, I am not teaching you to be immoral and all those things, but when push comes to shove, when you are really blank, you can take that leap of faith.
Contingency.
Which one? Contingency. Worst case scenario, you can use such. Yeah. So G20 meeting has some critical moments. What are the major takeaways from G20? One is multinational taxation. The next one is vaccination for the planet. Apart from this,
Climate change.
what did they achieve in climate change?
Actually,
G20, specifically speaking about G20, not COP26, G20 did not actually have any outcomes in the climate relation. Yes, they're still talking about the $100 billion promise, transfer of technology, green funds, and all those things. They have to bring them into the ground reality. So if you see today's newspaper, right? So this is what they are promising, that world leaders pledge to save forest, cut methane and methane emissions. Okay. Now, so if you technically see the amount of forests that are being destroyed, this particular part. In 2020, we have lost 258,000 square kilometers of forest, which is 27 football fields of forest lost every minute. Every minute.
in that 1 year.
In 1 minute, yeah, in 1 year, we are destroying that much amount of forest. Okay, and the heading reads, pledge to save the forest. Okay. Yes. Now you understand. See, if anyone is really interested in actually knowing the problems of the planet and how severe the issue apart from UPSC, Elizabeth Colbert. She's a resident writer of New Yorker. It's one of the best magazines out there, and she writes fantastic books. She wrote 2 books. One is Sixth Extinction, and then another was Under the Sky. Under the Sky only, I think. She's like real expert in the particular field. Actual climate extinction. If you see her posts on Twitter and all those things, you'll understand this is a hopeless planet. So that is where my skepticism comes from. Yes, it's just imagine. Just think about it. A football field is a huge amount of field. That amount of forest being destroyed, there is no hope for its revival. Yes or no? And whatever forests we are seeing are not pristine forests, right? They are not evergreen forests or virgin forests. They are destroyed. Once they are destroyed, Amazon is destroyed. You cannot expect to have a similar amount of forest unless there is a COVID pandemic or something like that. We have a lockdown for 3 years. 3 years, right? So let's see how it goes. So again, we have to be optimistic. Too much pessimism is also not a right thing. We still have to hope that we can do something about it. But are you having a serious intention? Yes or no? So that is what makes huge difference. The problem is all the forests are in developing or least developed nations. For example, Africa, Latin American countries. The developed countries have very less to offer. So if a Latin American country wants to stop destroying the forest, it needs funds. If you remember the Amazon forest fires did not happen naturally. Why did they happen? The Brazilian farmers or the farmers of Latin American countries wanted to rear more cattle. Okay, they didn't have the land, so they destroyed the forest and they started using it as a cattle ranches. They wanted to expand it. They deliberately went and started burning the Amazon forest. And the Brazil government was more than happy to allow the drama to continue. Only when it reached a new escalating level or a global attention came, the fires were stopped. Till then, you are happy to destroy the forest. I think Bolivia, as far as I remember, Bolivia offered the world. We have one of the most important oil reserves in the deepest Amazon forests. Okay, we will not explore it if you give us money. Not a single country made a squeak. They had no other option but to destroy the forest. We cannot blame these countries, right? They have their own political leader. They have their own Rahul Gandhi. They have their own Modi. Everybody have their own leaders. One will say, I will bring development. Yes. The other will say, we have to save forest. For an empty stomach, all these things don't make any sense. Yes or no? For poor nations, according to them, wherever they sit, it's a forest. From sitting in Hyderabad, I see how they are damaging. For them, everywhere they see there is forest. Lot of forest is there. Why should we be worried about it? Right? Everybody have their own perception issues, lot of political issues, and that leads to what? Destruction of the planet. Yes. No. Is this the best that the G20 countries could have done? Definitely not. They could have done much better. But this is all for answer writing. This is all for answer writing, nothing else. It's a repeated article, but we'll try to cover that also. The crypto conundrum. Yes, all of you know that Bitcoin is not a legal tender. Bitcoin is legal in India, but not a legal tender. The difference, I hope you know. Yes, what is the difference?
Legal tender in the sense we cannot exchange it like normal money we do. Now, to get the services paid. I mean, it is not fit to do the ordinary functions of the money that it does, but it can be owned as it is legal. Possession of it is legal, but tendering it for in the name
acceptance. That means legal tender is I need not accept. If you give me a Bitcoin in a petrol bunk, I may or may not accept it. But if I give a 100 rupees note, you have to accept it. There is no other way. Or else you are giving me a free petrol, right? So what is the major theme here? The underlying assets. Bitcoin do not have any underlying asset. We all know this. Yes. What is the underlying asset of a RBI note? Why do we believe in RBI note? If I said 2000 rupees, how do I know 2000 rupees are hidden behind that?
Because because there is some written on that, no sir.
Yes. It's by government of India. By government of India.
No sir, it is the assurance. The assurance is there.
Articulate. Take 1 minute and try to articulate it in a better way. Yes, you are saying something. It's by RBI. Okay. So what guarantees do I have?
So the bearer.
I promise to pay the bearer the sum of so and so rupees, and the RBI governor has signs it.
So he is personally liable.
No. He's the governor of RBI.
So RBI Act 1934 says, okay, like there is a legal backing. If somebody prints a money through RBI, yeah, that I actually am the owner of it, or I am the guarantor of it. That means, in the sense, if I print a note, okay, one day if I go to any shop in India and I give 2000 rupee notes, nobody is accepting it. Nobody is accepting. Then one day I will go to RBI and say, take your note and give me my 2000 rupees. RBI will give you your 2,000 rupees. So the promisor is RBI. So legal tenders have this legal promise. Whereas Bitcoin, no cryptocurrency have a legal backing. Underlying asset is not there. That's the major difference. Okay, there is no promise. Then the fluctuation rupee. Do you see rupee fluctuating very easily? One day 70, next day 300. No, the same, right? 70, 76, more or less 3 or 4 rupees in the last 2 years will be the basic fluctuations. But cryptocurrency, there is a huge amount of fluctuation. One day Elon Musk says, I love Bitcoin, prices will be very high. Next day, no, prices will fall. So what led to that rise and fall? Whim and fancy of a billionaire. Yes or no? It's not even guaranteed. Tomorrow it might even go to a new height or it might collapse to a new low. There is no guarantee. So you cannot base your economy on all these underlying assets, right? And there are also parallel economies. There are also parallel economies. Why? Bitcoin is created out of thin air. I mean, underlying asset is zero, but still it can be used for legal economy. Then the economy will have a high chance of collapsing. Bolivia, I think, not Bolivia. El Salvador is the first country to accept the Bitcoin as a legal tender. So, but El Salvador economy is totally now dependent on Elon Musk tweets. You can understand the damage that you might do to your own economy. Right.
Will a Bitcoin concern personal property?
Yes, definitely.
If politician wants a Bitcoin, does he liable to show that in his property?
If we, if in India, you're technically supposed to tell the government that I own Bitcoin. He is supposed to declare it because you should not have any moral authority. I mean, moral hiding, right? Yes, but mostly people don't store in Bitcoins. Nobody is that foolish. At least, you know, if I want to save my money in Bitcoin, if I want to make money in Bitcoin, that's one thing. If I want to save my money in Bitcoin, it's a very bad idea.
But it's not taxable.
See, again, it depends. For example, if I come to know you have 300 crores in Bitcoin, okay, I will ask the source of income. At least then you will have to pay the taxes. And let's say there is short-term capital gain, long-term capital gain. You have made that money in 3 years, then it is long-term capital gain. Then I will charge you on the taxes. Okay.
Sir, you used one word for because it is Musk.
Elon Musk.
For a celebrity word you used.
Women fancy.
What is that, sir?
Tikka, like more women fancy. What is a whim? Whims and fancies means.
Okay, whims and fancies.
It's a momentaneous, like. Yes.
Then whims and fancies.
That's a sentence. So now coming back to the discussion, is Bitcoin really bad? No, it is a very good mechanism for legal accountability. So what will we do? We will take the RBI, we will take the blockchain, then we will combine them and create something called as central bank digital currency on our own. Okay, so that is a long-term outcome. China has already started this experiment. Okay, China has already started this experiment. Just like your UPI app, you will install a RBI app and RBI will issue currency and you can just keep on exchanging, but it will be based on blockchain, right? What is the advantage? What is the advantage of central bank digital currency? Yeah, see, again, just like UPI, almost all the assets, for example, blockchain, that means end-to-end accountability. Every single rupee you use will be registered somewhere. You cannot claim that, you know, I didn't receive the money. Next, it has an underlying promisor, that is RBI. Then every transaction you do will be legal. Yes, black money can be eliminated. Just like UPI, less cash economy, there is no need for fake notes. Money coming from Pakistan and other places is totally useless. Yes, above all, government will actually have an idea of economy in true sense. If you see various reports, the black money or black economy in India varies from 10% to 120%. How much black money is there in the country? One report says it's 10% of the GDP. That means if Indian GDP is $3 trillion, we have around $300 billion of black money. One more report says it's 120%. Okay, that means Indian economy actual size is $6 trillion, not $3 trillion. Okay, the parallel economy is twice. So all this black money is hiding where? In the name of cash transactions, land dealings, and all these things. So your money is hidden in 10,000 places. So Indian economy appears like a $3 trillion economy. In reality, it's around $5 to $6 trillion economy or more also. Okay, so if you go for this CBDR and less cash economies, you cannot have any hidden amount. Yes or no? Let's say right now what will happen? You buy a land in Hyderabad. All this is hypotheticals. In future, this will happen. You are buying and selling a land. You will have a digital record. Okay. In future, the land record will be blockchain linked. Okay. A 1 crore rupee land at market price will be registered as a 40 land property. Stamp duty will be paid only for 40 lakh. Black money. All of you know this, right?
Yes,
if you
yes.
purchase an apartment in Hyderabad or land in Hyderabad, the stamp duty is very less. In reality, market price is very high. So what happened to the rest of the 60 lakhs? Black money. Imagine in future, central bank will bring a digital currency and says every transaction above 50,000 rupees has to be done through this online app only. So right now I'm giving you 40 lakhs officially, 60 lakhs I'm giving you in black. Okay. In future, black or white, I have to send you only through digital channels. And then how does it make any difference? Government will know. Government should know. So the places to hide your black money will come down drastically. Yes. You cannot find a business in Hyderabad nowadays who doesn't accept UPI.
Yes.
It's very hard, or else you won't be able to do the business. Yes. So you cannot force. Earlier they used to do this always drama and only cash, no UPI. Now, no UPI, no business. As simple as that. So the tax collections of governments will increase. So all these things will happen sooner than later. So that is how blockchain is going to revolutionize the economy. Central bank digital currency. Issues will definitely be there. We cannot overnight wish away everybody to move away from cash to CBDR. But slowly, people have to swallow their old tricks and move towards the new adaptations. Right? I hope you understand. Yes. Now the problem here is we cannot allow a parallel currency. Parallel currency in the sense Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin is so popular? It doesn't have any accountability. It doesn't have any accountability. It is purely illegal. I mean illegal in the sense it can be used for all kind of illegal purposes. Drugs, kidnapping, ransomware, malware. So all these advantages are there for cryptocurrencies. If we allow cryptocurrencies to exist and CBDRs to exist, those who want to do all these illegal activities will do it in the alternative currencies. So alternative currencies have to be regulated, and their technology, the Ethereum or whatever, their idea or concept should be used for developmental purposes. But the currency should not be allowed to survive for a long. Clear? Yes. Especially in countries like India, where people are so prone to cyber crimes very easily. It's a very, very bad idea for cryptocurrencies to be entertained a lot. No. So if you see the typical caste argument, we have seen this in multiple times, right? This is empirical data. Out of all the 8 secretaries, only 4 are from scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, even after 70 years of independence. So it's an empirical argument to support why we need more data. More data means data-driven policy making. Less data means assumptions. This caste is good, that caste is bad. So all these are assumptions. So what should we do? We should have a caste census where socioeconomic criteria are clearly identified. So then we will exactly know, let's say within Brahmins, how many people are poor, how many people are rich, right? Then EWS will be increased or decreased accordingly. For all general, not only for Brahmins, all general categories, right? So you need to know exactly how many are poor. Then EWS will make sense. If 30% of the entire population is poor, then the 30% should be given for welfare activities or affirmative actions. The more the data we have, the better the understanding. But no governments want to change the status quo. Why? Bureaucracy hates change.
Yeah.
Bureaucracy thrives in
Status quo.
so they don't want the change to happen. They will tooth and nail fight the change. So should we have a caste-based census in the country? Census. Did I say anything else? I said census only, right? We should have a caste-based census. See, until you put it on pen and paper, everything is an assumption. We need to break the glass ceilings of this nation once and for all using accurate data. Our fears that it might be used for political consolidation are true. Okay, at the same time, it can also be used for identifying the last man in the line. That is also equally true. Yes or no? So see, within tribes, when I say ST, I'm not talking about one group, right? I'm talking about thousands of subgroups. Within those thousands of subgroups, I don't know their marginalized status. Is caste directly linked to your income status?
No.
I don't know.
Yes.
Exactly right. See,
Yes.
I am assuming my caste is not linked to my income source. It doesn't matter if I'm in Hyderabad, Banjara Hills, or probably caste does not make any difference. But if you are from a particular caste living in Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh, okay, your income is reflected through your caste. That means your caste is not at all empowered. There is not a single graduate in the entire group. 1,000 people are there in that caste, not a single graduate. What does that tell you? That caste actually deserves a lot of support from the state. This kind of empirical analysis can be done. Consolidations will definitely happen. But we also have seen caste consolidations won't work in the long run. Why? Let's say Mayawati. Mayawati became chief minister. She was corrupt, right? She misused and abused the trust, the particular communities bestowed on her. Then what happened after that? Even if she is getting percentage of votes, okay, she is not converting that into electoral victories. If you take Uttar Pradesh right now, she is not even a serious contestant. It's always between BJP and probably Akhilesh Yadav, probably. So what does that tell you? People might give you a chance in the name of caste consolidation, but they also need development. They also need welfare activities. So if as long as you do that, it doesn't matter who you are. If you don't do that, caste consolidations alone are not going to help you win elections. Clear? So it's a two-way street, but logically speaking, this country has to come out of this discussion one time or the other. Like we need to have the data once and for all. Yes, it's a political gamble, and if there is any one person in India who is alive who can actually pull it away or get away with that is Prime Minister Modi. Through his charisma and the sheer following he has, he can get away with this census, right? For positive purposes. Everybody else is asking it for assumption of caste consolidation. I'm happy either way. Why? Once you let the genie out of the bottle, okay, whether for you are using it for political consolidation, I will use the same data for analysis. Either way, I'm getting the data, right? For the data to come out is more important. Then we will analyze the dealings. Why even after 70 years of independence, only 4 secretaries are from SC and ST communities? It's not like discrimination is there, right? There is some reason. What is that exact reason? Somebody has to sit, think, analyze, and bring out that data. Yes. And next thing, at the end of the day, as Supreme Court has said, or multiple people have said, efficiency and effectiveness also matters. Is it a criteria or is it just a myth? So there must be so many officers from those communities also who are doing fantastic work. So that myth has to be bursted one day or the other that these people cannot work.
Stereotype.
That stereotyping also has to be brought out. So see, there are some officers who are hiding under that. Some inefficient officers hiding in the name of caste and religion are also there. Their myth also has to be burst. Yes or no? Caste cannot protect you. You have to work. Once you are in the system, you have to work. That discussion also has to be brought out. So we are providing shelter for all kind of groups. So throw light. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Yes or no? There is no disinfectant in the world as powerful as sunlight. The same applies to all the myths, caste, stereotyping, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, consolidations. Throw light. One day they won't have any other discussion, right? They cannot hide. Where is development? Where is Vikas? Vikas kidhar hai? So now you cannot keep on saying Vikas, right? You have to bring Vikas. Only then people will vote for you. I mean, Vikas in different terms. Whether for Mamata Banerjee it is Vikas, for Nitish Kumar it is Vikas, for everybody it is Vikas only. Even for Andhra Pradesh also it is Vikas only. How long will people keep on living in subsidies? One day you have to provide development, growth. Clear? I hope you understand. Yes. Huh. See, for example, that is what this kind of articles are trying to tell you, right? Prefix the castes. Talk to all the experts in the field. Talk to the MROs, RTOs, ground level people who worked in that particular area. For example, he writes a Singh. He is also from the same community, but he writes Singh and Tomar just for differentiation. But in reality, both of them are from same caste. Identify all the castes. Prefix the headings. 1500, 2000, maximum 5000 castes will be identified. See, your pride is one thing, your reality is one thing. So 5000 castes can be identified. Then ask, do you belong to 1 to 5000? Then the consolidation is easy. If you ask me, I'm saying within, for example, within Brahmin community, I will say 25 castes. This, that, my is, everybody thinks mine is best. That happens, right? So what am I doing? If I give you the option, it will be 4 lakh castes. If I consolidate, then 5000 castes, we will identify the thing. You do a pilot project. You do a pilot project just to identify the castes, not even the number of people. You do a pilot project to identify the castes, right? Then probably a lot of errors will come. Then you go back, rectify it, make it better. Take 2 years of time. But one day we will actually come to know, okay, macroly India has 6000 castes. Now go for census. Throw everybody into the 6000 bracket. It's doable, right? It will take time and energy.
Yes.
He will come and say, why not my caste is involved? Why his caste is named? We are both same. So different things will happen, right? But it is doable. But if you go the other way around, if I keep on asking people, what is your caste? They actually don't even understand the meaning of caste, right? They think of it different times. Sub-tribe is also a caste. So it creates a whole new mess. That is why people smartly labeled only for SC, ST, general, OBC. If you are an Indian, you fall either in these 4 categories only. But is it actually true? Within them, they have their own infusions. So the same thing can be done for major castes. Doable, right? That is the mistake they have done. First, they didn't finalize. They went to ask. They should have done the opposite. Just like UPSC, right? What is your optional? It will give 54 lists and you have to select anyone. If I give you the choice, agrochemistry, forest, mechanical engineering, I will create my own. I will take one chapter from all the subjects and I will label the new syllabus. This is my syllabus. You cannot ask UPSC to, yes or no? You cannot ask a student to choose his optional. You have to give him a choice, or else I will pick up one chapter, the most easier chapters of all the 54 optionals, and say this is my syllabus. Okay. So that will be a disaster. So, right. So I hope you have understood the caste census article also, why it is important. Both the sides are equally true. And also remember, there is always a vested interest. No matter what article, which discussion we have, there will always be some vested interests. For example, let's imagine a marginalized section of the society. They are not having a voice. So right now we are discussing about the macro and micro subcastisms. Okay, they think if I accumulate all the subcastes until this is the actual percentage of my community, it doesn't matter whether I like him or not, I will have more political leverage. So that is also one aim. to consolidate their numbers. Okay, to know their actual strengths for political bargaining. Who will benefit? Obviously, the cream within those communities only will benefit, but the numbers have been boosted. So that is also a vested interest. Like this 10,000 things will be there. But above all, as a governance, as a policymaker point of view, you can use the data to cut them into the size one day. I mean, the vested interests. Right? Any questions? Understood everything we have discussed? No? Last 2 days, you must have seen this Ganges dolphin. Indus dolphin was yesterday's news article. Punjab, Ganges dolphin are the same. Indus dolphin and Ganges dolphin are the same. Two different things, right? Name itself is saying one is in Indus rivers, the other one is in Ganges rivers. So they are totally different. For map pointing purposes and current affairs also, you need to know what is Tigray region. Why Tigray region is in the news? Which country?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Yes, Ethiopia, Tigray region. So he is a person who won the Nobel Peace Prize. The Ethiopian Prime Minister. Okay, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for solving the Ethiopian crisis. Now he is the same person who is accelerating the civil war. He has stopped the food access to all that particular region. Millions of people are pushed into poverty and malnourishment. And he is using Air Force, Army, Navy, not Navy, they don't have Navy, Air Force, Army, and all these things to suppress the civilians. Nobel Peace Prize Committee is happy. Tears, happy tears. They are crying out of joy. Wow, our foresight is fantastic. The lesson is don't give prizes too early. Just like Obama got Nobel Peace Prize for nuclear disarmament. You know, right? Just when Obama won elections 2008, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for what? His statement that I am interested in removing the nuclear weapons from the planet. His intention got Nobel Prize, just like UPSC aspirants, right? Intentions could have got IAS. Everybody will be IAS. Yes or no? No? Intentions won't get you. So I think these two are disasters for Nobel Peace Prize community. They should ban the award itself. Yes. See, and see that is a problem, right? We are not discussing about Yemen, Tigray, and all these countries as much as a major discussion. The world is not bothered about some small African nation destroying itself. Yes. Probably they are deliberately not discussing it because of the Nobel Prize. Okay. Right. So if there are any questions, we will continue, or else we'll take a break. I mean, we'll continue the discussion tomorrow. Tomorrow or day after tomorrow? Day after tomorrow. Yes. Tomorrow is holiday, right? Oh, I will discuss. All right. Any questions? I have no idea. I haven't discussed. I was just casual.
Sir, can you put it in perspective that why almost all African nations fail?
The colonial rule is one basic understanding, right? They didn't allow, and just like India, they demarcated randomly, haphazardly. See, there are ethnic groups. Ethnic groups need clear-cut demarcation. What Britishers did is haphazard demarcation. So I have to fight my internal energies to sort out these issues first. Then I have to come out. Then these issues are not permanently solved. Very few, lucky few will solve the issues permanently. They will be continuously burning, just like India and Pakistan. Okay. Then if I have to solve it permanently, then I have to focus on the development. When I'm coming out in the name of development, I should pray that there is no friction again. So if every time India is developing, there is a war with Pakistan, what will happen? Again, our energies are spent on these things. And if you take African nations, majority of them are poor. They don't have human capital, social capital. Within country, they have different groupings. Even if you see Tigray now, Tigray region is exactly the thing is the conflict, the historical baggage. The two ethnic groups that are there in that particular area are not happy. Right? So these ethnic conflicts are very, very difficult to solve. You need to have that magnanimity to accept them. Most times it doesn't happen. Yes or no? It's like, if you are from Telugu states, you can understand there are caste issues. So these things, even after all the development and maturity, still people kill each other in the name of caste. You can understand the ethnicities there.
Complex that India is.
They are definitely complex because the ethnic identity is like it's much bigger than caste, right? It's who you are, your core identity. For example, your tribal group or your ethnic group is so because you have certain traits, and I hate your traits. So the story continues. Okay, for example, if you see Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda, they killed each other. Why? They all look same to you and I, for an outsider, but they believed they were different people. And the historical baggage mixed with fear, fake news, colonial baggage, it keeps on escalating.
So why never resources came to their aid? They are so diamond.
Culture of that is a curse of resources, right? See, even if you take the Naxals or tribals, why are they not reaping the benefits? Where is coal? Where is bauxite? Where are minerals in India? Under the forest, under the tribal lands. Tribals are the poorest people sitting on the richest land. And the same is resource curse. The term itself is resource curse. Because you have resource, okay, you are being exploited. And who are exploiting? People with power, the marginalized. See, wealth distribution do not happen, right? You take Africa, you take Mexico, you take Brazil, you take India also. Where is wealth? Concentrated with the richest sections of the society. It is not trickling down to the rest of the society. Who's to blame? The powerful sections. We don't have, they have guns, we don't have guns. That is the only difference. Right? So do read this book, Why Nations Fail. It's a fantastic book. Why Nations Fail. A good summary. It discusses why this inequality is a very bad idea.